2024 Miami Dolphins season started with Tyreek Hill in trouble. Now it's ending with Tyreek Hill making trouble. In the meantime, the Dolphins go 8-9. They watch Tua get sidelined twice by injury, and they wish they had a backup plan at backup quarterback. They wish they had that. What a year it's been. Hello, Dolphins fans. Welcome to the season wrap-up edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I am your host, Chris Perkins, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Miami Dolphins columnist. That is Dave Hyde, your South Florida Sun Sentinel columnist. That is David Furones, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Miami Dolphins writer. Guys, very briefly, Dave Hyde first, what did you think of the season wrap-up press conference yesterday?
Oh, let's talk about this, Perk. Your show is starting like 2 minutes late, okay? I mean, we cover the team. Timeliness is an issue, as we all know, and you can't start your show on time. I can't believe we're talking about players being late for meetings, and it was. I talked to people. I wrote about it in a column maybe a month ago, early December, and they said it was a problem inside the team. And now Mike talked about it. Well, I addressed it after the season, and my question is, why not during the season? Why wait till after the season to say we're not going to put up with this next year? And this is one of those little things that is often symbolic of larger problems of discipline and attention to detail, respect for coaches, teammates, and so little things, fundamental things they got to get under control.
Yep. Furones, what was one of your main takeaways?
Yeah, Hyde, I think you're the one that has to hold Perk accountable now for running this show late. Albeit, it was
I'm going to fine him. Fine him. Fines don't work, though. With us, fines would work.
That's right.
Don't fine me, please.
That's right. We would all feel that, wouldn't we? Yeah. All right, folks. So look, I want to remind you that you can leave your questions, thoughts, and comments in our live chat, which is the best place to get intelligent Dolphins conversation. Also want to remind you, if you miss any part of this show, you can catch the podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And we invite you to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, The Fans Flash. You can get that by scanning the QR code shown on your screen. You can keep up with everything that I write, Dave Hyde writes, and David Furones writes about your Miami Dolphins. Okay, so the 2024 season was a failure. We can all agree on that. They did not make the playoffs.
Well, wait a minute. No.
Exactly. So the Dolphins have to solve a few things in the offseason. One, Tyreek Hill, the ultimate troll. He spoke off the top of his head out of frustration, said that he wants out, but then he didn't tell that to Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier. We'll talk about what the Dolphins need to do with Tyreek Hill. Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel are both back. Should they be back? We'll talk about that. And then with Tua, Chris Grier was saying that Tua has to stay healthy. Tua knows that now. We're going to talk about that also, because I don't know that any of this stuff is going to change. And then finally, we're going to talk about the bottom line requirement for the 2025 Dolphins to declare that season a success. Do they have to win a playoff game, 2 playoff games? We'll break it all down for you. As we always say around here, there's an ocean of possibilities. Let's dive in. All right, so Dave Hyde, I'm going to give this to you first. Grier and McDaniel are back. Should they be back? Should the Dolphins have gone to, say, Louis Riddick as GM and Mike Vrabel as head coach? What's going on here, Dave Hyde?
Well, I would have made a change in the front office, shaking that up. I mean, we're going 7 years, Chris Grier as head of football operations, going into 10 years as GM. They haven't won anything in the whole time. They've had, we're up to 3 different coaches. We've had 3 or 4 different blueprints. And I still don't know what Chris Grier thinks winning football is, other than, well, whatever the coach wants, And so I would have shaken it up. There just some fundamental issues this season, backup quarterback, things that anybody could have seen were a problem. and yesterday the excuse was, or the explanation was, well, we were in line for a couple of them, and we didn't want to either pay the money or the compensatory picks. And I'm thinking, you know how much money they spent last offseason on everybody, and the fundamental number two problem beyond Tua, they didn't spend any money on, and they went with it. I mean, that's malpractice, and that's fireable offense when you add everything up. So I would have changed it over, but they're bringing it back. So my point now, they got to change some fundamental things in the way they go about their business.
Furones, are you shocked that they're back, Furones, or did you expect this in the last, say, 6 weeks, last month?
No, I'm not shocked. I always expected this, even as we went through the season, and whenever the question would come up, whether it's on this show from fans or the segments that we do with Big O, who we know has been steadfast on that Mike McDaniel's got to go this season. I always just figured that was the excuse that was going to be used, or reason, however you want to put it. It was that, well, if Tua doesn't miss those first 4 games and then what turned into 6 games because of the hip on top of the concussion early on, this team would have been a playoff team like the last 2 years, and you weren't firing anyone off of that alone. But I am getting tired, though, of every season just ending in excuses as to, well, last year it was because they had half the defense out and they went into a cold environment, the 4th coldest temperature at kickoff in NFL history, and that's why they couldn't win against the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. The year before that, it was because Tua was out with his second concussion of the season in the playoff game in Buffalo, and that's why with Skylar Thompson they couldn't make any noise in the postseason because of that. And then now it's a 3rd year running of just you have an injury excuse at the end of the year. So I am getting tired of the excuses. I feel both should be on the hot seat together going into 2025, but they created this mess together. Let them see the end together, and that means that next year it's really a do-or-die scenario where you need to produce the results, and then now there are no more excuses. It's got to happen. I got that sentiment from the Steve Ross statement that, yes, I'm bringing them back, but with the understanding the status quo is not acceptable and it needs to get better and get better fast.
Yeah, you guys know my feeling. They should both be gone. All 3, including Tua, should be gone. But because you signed Tua to that bad extension, I think they have to stay together because Grier and McDaniel work so well together. And then McDaniel can get the most out of Tua. Tua's not going anywhere. So whether you want to work it front to back or back to front, Tua's here, McDaniel's here, Grier is here, and I think they should be fired, but because of that bad contract, they should be here together because that's the way it's going to work the best.
Think of the logic, though. Because they screwed up that contract, bring them all back. I get what you're saying. I get exactly what you're saying, yep. But that's so Dolphin. That's so Dolphin. They screwed up the contract, so they bring them all back.
Right. Exactly. I know.
But you did commit to this core for some sizable time, not just, okay, now at this point it's done. So you made your bed, and this is on Stephen Ross as well, because he's got all of this going this way. So now you got to let it run its course and see it to the end. And then if it doesn't get better quick, then next year is the year where you make the move, is the way I see it.
Fans are not happy, as you could predict here. Peter McDowell, what's going on? Raphael Courtwright, Mel B. Crazy. Mel B. Crazy says the Grier McDaniel left me with no confidence. Lalo Cisneros, this is a clown organization. Rob, Hill, but what has happened to Waddle? He caught 100 passes in his rookie season. In 2024, he was an average NFL receiver, maybe lower. I will tell you this, Rob. Jalen Waddle had 7 drops last I looked, and that was like 8th or 10th in the league, so not a good year for him. Cap for life. So Grier says we didn't have money to pay backups. So my question is, why nobody asked Grier? Was it because we paid Tua? Well, that kicks in next year. The backup quarterback was this year. The backup quarterback deal, Cap for life, again, Chris Grier, and I was told this also, they were in on some veteran backups, but if they paid the salary, they were going to lose the third-round compensatory pick that they got for losing Christian Wilkins. It makes no sense because you're also getting a third-round compensatory pick for losing Rob Hunt. So you had two of them. You could afford to lose one to save your season. They chose to preserve that third-round pick.
No, I think this is after the fact, coming up with an excuse. I mean, that might have been the thinking there, but the bottom line is he should have just come out and say, I screwed up. Right? Yeah. I mean, that's what everybody knows. You screwed up. I didn't hear that from Chris Grier at all yesterday. I screwed up. It was, disappointing season. We're optimistic next year, but, come on, be accountable. The owner's not going to hold you accountable, but you can hold yourself accountable on some of these issues, and that's a fundamental one.
Speaking of that, DeHesse, who checks in from New Mexico with us all the time, he says the press conference was so sad. It was basically, you guys were right all along, and we vow to get it corrected this time around. You're right. David Lazar says, we are a dismal organization, no way to change it. I'll still be a season ticket holder, but we are not going anywhere anytime soon. Gentlemen, are the Dolphins going anywhere anytime soon, or are they in like a 2-year malaise right now, do you think?
Well, where's anywhere? I mean, can they make the playoffs? Yeah, absolutely. But when you look at the top of the AFC, look at the good programs that are going. Again, Bill Walsh used to say there's only 8 teams we have to worry about every year because the others will lose. They'll fall away because of their own mistakes. And the Dolphins are in that other category. But look at the teams. Even Cincinnati, which didn't make the playoffs. Joe Burrow had an incredible year. They don't make the playoffs. They're an easy team to shore up. But then look at the ones that Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, right at the top. A year from now, the Dolphins play the AFC North in their schedule. So they'll get a chance for that Baltimore and Cincinnati and Pittsburgh and to see how they match up. But they don't match up right now. Neither roster-wise, meaning the quarterback being the fundamental issue there, or just culture-wise. A marginal team like Pittsburgh, look at the culture. They win on toughness. They're not a great team when you look at their offensive position skills, their playmaking, but they're a culture team. So can the Dolphins fix some of that?
Furones, what's the ceiling for this team next year?
Yeah, and therein lies the issue. If you are accepting that you are not as good as the Buffalo Bills, then you're never winning the AFC East. You're never going to host a playoff game. You're always going to be stuck at really a ceiling of what we just saw the previous 2 seasons of get into the playoffs as a wild card and go on the road somewhere that's probably cold and just fold and fall flat in front of that team. So is there a way to get to the point where you can surpass the Buffalo Bills? It looked like there was a chance, and it was very close at the end of last season when they had a 3-game lead with 5 weeks remaining in the division and had it all set for them to have a home path through the playoffs, at least maybe. And then, of course, they gave up that advantage late in the season and lost a regular season finale at home. Still had to go on the road in the playoffs. So only more distance has been created since then. So even after Josh Allen lost Stephon Diggs and other players, the Bills almost did a half a rebuild with just restocking on talent. But they have Josh Allen is the thing. So between them, Kansas City, Baltimore, it doesn't appear like there's a path to get on their level. So it seems like the ceiling is just to be one of the next tier of teams and bow out in the first round.
Scott Pro, what's up? I got game. AJ NJ, what's going on? J1364, Dana Bice, Legend, Dave Harbor, checking in from San Diego. The Ghost One. Who else? NM123, Sean Heller, Mark Heavy. Everybody's on here. Adam Leitner, all the regulars are on here. Guys, let me ask you guys this. Well, Legend says 8-9, 9-8 next year, maybe playoffs. Let me ask you this. Let's get back to Tyreek. Did Tyreek embarrass the organization? Did Tyreek show up Mike McDaniel? And should something be done about that, David Furones?
Well, absolutely, he did all of the above, and you could kind of see it brewing. I mean, I even thought back to the Monday night game against Tennessee when you could see him shouting on the sideline, and it was clear he was by the camera angles that he was shouting at Mike McDaniel. But his explanation was that he was shouting to motivate Jalen Wright, the rookie running back who was in the game. I think we even looked at some play-by-play and noticed he might have been off the field by the time that happened. So I don't think it all adds up, like many things with Tyreek Hill. But that is sort of the enabling nature and just the sense that Mike McDaniel has created, where it's a player-led locker room and this player empowerment. And then when it comes time to then putting your foot down and being the law in amongst the players, then are you the man that can step up and demand that? Which was the question originally when we came ahead, which is, does his personality bode for leading the entire locker room, being the leader of men of the whole operation, different from being a position coach and you're working one-on-one with your group of players and trying to get the best out of them. Now you are the leader of the whole team and locker room. So can he turn that around? That'll be the biggest thing now, because now it has become unveiled that a lot of players were very comfortable being late to meetings, doing whatever they want. And even with the fines or whatever other system of punishment was put in place, that wasn't enough. So now that'll be the big question on Mike going into 2025 is if he can suddenly become a disciplinarian for these players that don't follow the rules.
Dave Hyde, how would Don Shula and or Jimmy Johnson handle Tyreek Hill?
Well, those eras are past. Nobody does that anymore. But what you do is you get Mike Tomlin saying, when he's got problems, just with similar situation with a receiver, and throwing a tantrum in front of the media, and he said he needs to grow up. Okay, let's start there. We're just saying the obvious. Nobody said the obvious yesterday. Well, Mike Grier, well, he didn't ask us about a trade. It was like, come on, let's talk like adults. Okay, so what if he didn't ask you? It's out there. It's out there in the ether. Everybody knows he pulled himself out of a game. He quit on his team in the fourth quarter. He then threw a tantrum. A couple games earlier, he dropped a couple passes and said, well, it's because Mike McDaniel didn't let me practice. I mean, look, nobody takes Tyreek seriously, all right? You shouldn't anyways. His quotes, things he says, the team put up with him because he's a top talent. Even in a mysterious year to me, what happened to him this year in the passing game and all this, where his numbers dropped significantly. He's still your best talent on the team. That's why you put up with him. But you don't have to take everything he says seriously. Not when he pulls himself out of the game, when he talks about wanting to be traded, and it's seconds after the season, everybody hears it. You have to take that seriously, and you have to come down on him somehow. But this is something Mike's got to get grips with, and it's not. With him, it's not just easy as putting your arm around him and say, we're teammates, which is how he likes to approach things.
Yeah, I think
Hyde's point, Perk. When Tyreek Hill is putting up 1,700 yards and being an all-pro, then on the graph of how much BS you deal with, compared to how he's producing, then you deal with more stuff when you have a 9-3 start to a season and you're rolling and you're leading the AFC East and things are going well. You're putting up numbers, but when he falls short of 1,000 yards and he's not a Pro Bowler for the first time in his career, and maybe he has opinions on that. It was the offense, the way the offense was this year, but he also did not produce and did not come through in his opportunities when he had open chances and dropped the ball, literally and figuratively. Then you put up with less of the BS at that point, and Mike McDaniel's going to have to put his foot down and control. The question is, can
the larger point to me is this what the Dolphins would like to do? I mean, there's let's set aside the salary cap implications, which is real world stuff right now. But they got two similar receivers making $60 million that they can't get the ball to consistently. I mean, that's no way to structure your team salary cap, your assets. or anything. I mean, if you're paying those guys that much money, they have to be number one and number two on the food chain of your offense. And it wasn't that way this year. It was the previous 2 years. So can they fix that, or do they need? And again, the salary cap question is that's real world stuff. I'm a little in the fantasy world here, but would you like to trade one of them just to move on and put your assets elsewhere?
Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting thing to watch is what happens with this offense going into next season. Scott Pro, I got you online. Doesn't not backtracking mean his comments doesn't backtracking his comments mean he still wants out? I will answer that online later on today. Peter McDowell, Grier gives me no confidence, and he failed to address Tua failing to win big games. Never mind his injuries, because when healthy, he can't beat good teams. How do we fix that? What changes? I'll answer that online. NM123, the status quo for Chris Grier's entire time with the Dolphins has been mediocrity. You're right. I'll get to that. I got game. AJNJ, Shula would never accept players being late. I'll talk about that. Finally, Dana Bice. Tyreek situation is what happens when you defer leadership and make a troll a captain. I will answer all of those online later today in a Q&A. Gentlemen, let's move on to segment number 2, and that is 2025 essentially a one-year contract for Grier, McDaniel, and Tua? Furones, if these guys don't at least win a playoff game, are they all three out? Is it good enough to make the playoffs? Do they have to win 2 playoff games? Do you put in exceptions? Well, Tua missed 3 games. Like, tell me about what has to happen to meet a standard in 2025.
Yeah, well, what I would like to see is them get back onto the track of now is time to go and win a playoff game. That was the goal the whole time this past season, and sure, should it now take a next step if you were on that track? I understand that, but I don't think you're going and firing folks if the organization finally gets a playoff win for the first time in what would now be 25 years. I think you would then celebrate that as a success. So in that situation, then of course you're bringing people back again. But yeah, I do feel it is a one-year contract now. Well, for Grier and McDaniel, you're asking Tua as well. I think they signed that contract. There's no out until now 2 years from now. So now you are committed there. But if it really goes awry, then if you're going, yes, Grier and McDaniel are out, then that next GM and coach contract, they could maybe find their next quarterback if they're selecting at a right position in the draft, whatever the case may be. And then maybe you still have to keep Tua for another year as you transition and then figure out the plan going forward. But it might take 2 years for Tua if there is the doomsday scenario of it's all got to go away after next year.
Hi, what do Grier and McDaniel have to do in 2025 to return in 2026?
Well, let's start here. I mean, we can get to the end of the line, okay, playoff win, et cetera. So what they need to start doing right now is what kind of culture, how do they want to sit? How do they want to practice in minicamp? Because last year their practices were goofy, let's play around. We don't need that last day of practices. Are they going to change anything? You go to training camp. There's a joint practice. Atlanta Falcons are running sprints after practice. Dolphins are walking off the field. Calais Campbell has been around the league. He says the word on the street, it was the Dolphins have an easy training camp. Okay, so let's not talk. I don't want to talk about the end where it goes. We know they need to win playoffs and significant. But I'm going to start at the front end, just on their work habit. Little things, arriving meetings on time we talked about. But, Mike McDaniel would go to Heat playoff games a couple years ago and sit there with players. And let's not be goofing around when it's time to work. Okay? And I would start at that point. Is something going to change in the summer that will make you think, okay, things might change during the season?
Yeah, I wonder if this season could serve as the humbling that they needed to now go and take the OTAs, offseason workouts, going into training camp as seriously as a team truly needs to compete. Because I think there was a lot of a feeling of content for, we accomplished all these things statistically, and if a couple things go differently, we would be the number 2 seed in the AFC and would have won the AFC East. And I felt like Mike McDaniel almost took the approach of once we get to the playoffs, this is what we got to do to win. Well, how about everything that you need to establish a winner from the start of offseason workouts through training camp before the season, because the NFL will humble you very quickly when you assume you're just going right back to the playoffs and you got to do whatever it takes to win once you get there. Well, the NFL just humbly slapped you in the face and said, you're not getting into the postseason here with the approach that you took.
Lucky Turk 21 says Tua needs OL help for him to succeed. Lance McDonald says Waddle missed a lot more balls than Reek, but yeah, let's blame Reek. I got game AJ NJ. Hopefully nobody hires Weaver. That would be a big loss. Chris says the Dolphins have to not win a playoff game for Grier to be back in 2026. It's worked for 25 years. Mick,
24, don't exaggerate.
Yeah, nice catch, Dave Hyde. We like to be exact on this show. Mick Rakonovich says, why was Jalen Wright not used after he had 86 yards versus New England, then only got 5 carries versus the Colts? This is a good topic, Mick, and let me ask you guys this. I think it's because Jalen Wright, they didn't trust him as much as they trusted Achane and Raheem Mostert. I agree with you, because that New England game when Jalen got 86 yards, I thought, wow, you kind of discovered somebody. He didn't play much after that. Then after him and Skyler combined on that fumble, that was pretty much it for Jalen Wright. My question to you guys is, what about this running game? They piled up some yards. We saw them get, I think they were 2 and 5 in games where they had 100 or more yards rushing. The run game piled up some yards, but they're not good in short yardage. They're not good on third down. They're not good in red zone. They're not good on goal line. So basically your run game is just some big plays against bad teams. What needs to happen for this run game? Is the run game the number one problem with the offense going into 2025? Or is it O-line, slot receiver? Dave Hyde, you first.
Oh, boy.
I know
that's unpacking a lot right there. Look, I remember Teron Armstead saying after the New England game that this is when Tua missed it, and they won the game, and they had a nice running game, and Teron Armstead said Tua came in the locker room after and said, we're going to run the ball like this when I'm back too. And it didn't work out. Why is that? Is it and I don't think there's one simple, easy answer. The guards were awful. They had 3 guards playing this year who probably shouldn't be on your team. Maybe keep one as a backup, maybe, but because you need depth. But when you're looking at 8 or 9 offensive linemen, do you want 3 guards who you don't trust? Now, was that the only reason you got a small running back and yet the small running back averaged 9 yards last year, and he averaged 3 point something. I don't know what he ended up with, but he was in the high 3s towards the end of the season. I don't have a simple answer. If defense, you have Tua who can't run, you don't want him to run. He was told it was unacceptable to run. Don't run the ball. That makes it a lot easier for defenses when you look around the league and who's run. So, but Mike McDaniel has a lot of questions, design questions for his offense this offseason. Even as you blend those in with the personnel questions. Again, you got $60 million at your receivers, and we're talking about is running the ball the number one priority. If that's the number one priority, you don't need $60 million at your 2 receivers. So Mike McDaniel's got a lot on his plate on how to figure this out.
Furones, what are you thinking for the offense in 2025? Which direction do they need to go? How do they get more out of that offense?
Yeah, more physicality in the run game would help. I think why you saw Devon Achane's yards per carry plummet so much is because Now you're expecting him to be a bell cow, and for a diminutive back, a speedster, now you want him carrying this huge workload on top of. I mean, how many touches did he have this season? Because he's also added so much in the pass catching aspect of him. So if you can use him in that role with some change of pace with his speed, when you have a physical back going sort of to establish the run game first and also be the finisher, the closer, when you need to run the clock out when you're leading the fourth quarter, that would benefit. And then you look on the offensive line. Chris Grier said, we're going to have to invest in the offensive line now. Yeah, the Dolphins have invested a lot of draft capital in the offensive line, in tackle specifically, but also in free agency. They brought in Teron Armstead in 2022. The draft picks that were used on Robert Hunt and tackle moved into guard. Austin Jackson started off as a tackle. They moved to guard. So Patrick Paul now last season. So yes, they still prioritized the tackle offensive line. But at guard this year, you went with two guys who the year before they lost out on a free for left guard. You have Robert Hunt, an elite right guard, and then a left guard. You had two guys, Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones, who lost out on the competition that they win, and now the next year they're your two starting guards to start the season at left and right. So therein lies the huge. I mean, I can understand, like Hyde said. You have one of them as a reserve who can come in and be a serviceable backup, but now you're counting on both of them for your two starting guards. And then on top of that, Austin Jackson, losing him halfway through the year, that hurts you after you gave him a contract. Teron Armstead, when he was healthy, I think played tremendously. Aaron Brewer was a good free agent pickup at center, but you look at the offensive line, the guards, tight end blocking didn't get as good of blocking as they would have expected out of Aaron Jerome Smith. The inline blocking need to get better there. And then Alec Ingold, mid-season, dealing with some calf injuries, some other things, that hurt well because you didn't get the same season as you did previously.
Trinity Soundworks, what's going on? Yeah, you made it. Fleming Law says, this reminds me of when Huizinga brought back Wanstead after a 10-win season and then fired him mid-season. Somebody in here had asked, would McDaniel be fired mid-season if they're off to a bad start after 8 games? I'd have to say, yeah. I'd have to think that the players would lose confidence in him, and the fans definitely would. So he's definitely going to be on a hot seat.
Maybe they'd have Dan Campbell to bring in as the interim coach. Oh, no, that was when they fired Philbin after 4 games. After they brought him back, when everybody say, what is Stephen Ross bringing Joe Philbin back for? So, let's hope I hope they solve the problems, but these are significant issues they got to deal with, and they're not. Some stuff we're talking about isn't in their wheelhouse of personalities that we've seen. A more disciplined team, being a more of a dictator as a coach. That's not who Mike is. And can he get the team to buy? Can he be genuine and at the same time be a lot firmer?
We get this question from Q Simmons, and I will throw this a derivative of this out to you guys. What organization had the worst year, the Bengals or the Dolphins? Both teams were supposed to be playoff contenders. Furones, I'll throw this to you first. Bengals, Dolphins, Jaguars, or Cowboys? Who had the worst season, and who's going to get back quickest next year?
Well, I think if you go reach back to our preseason predictions where we also pick the Super Bowl, I think I might have had Cincinnati going to the Super Bowl. So maybe they had the worst season, missing the playoffs entirely. But they'd probably also be the team that's on track to get back the quickest, I would say, based on the way they ended the season. And I could see Joe Burrow easily leading them right back into the thick of things. And if they would have gotten in as a 7 seed, I would have had them as a very dangerous team. I felt Buffalo should have actually been scared of them in the 2-7 matchup. Momentum the Bengals would have had going into the postseason in that. I think Buffalo favorable matchup. Granted, Broncos have had a great year, and Bo Nix has been tremendous too. But I don't see a rookie quarterback going in against Josh Allen and truly putting up too much of a competition there. So, but maybe the Dallas Cowboys, based on the spotlight that they're constantly. But just overall, yeah, it would probably be the Bengals from that.
All right, what do you think? Who is most disappointing? Dolphins or Cowboys or Jaguars or Bengals, and who gets back quickest?
Well, if we're talking disappointing, the Jaguars to me were the supreme disappointments. Dolphins played them in the opener. It was seen as a matchup with two playoff teams. The Dolphins were 8-9. The Jaguars, would they finish? 3 or 4 wins, but they were out of it. They were out of it by early October. So to me, not even close. But to David's point, look, when you have Joe Burrow was forced this year in the league, and the fact they're losing games 41-38 consistently, scores like that. So they're an easy fix. Get some defense. I mean, that's the easy fix. So Dolphins are a much and I can't remember the other teams you picked, but they're a more difficult fix.
H says, "Is it me or the audio off?" Yeah, I actually think it's my audio. I think it's my phone. I didn't pay my Verizon bill this month, and they're mad. So I think that's what it is. Parag Bias says, "What's happening with Crossman? We don't know what's going to happen with staff changes." Actually, I mean, the special teams weren't as big a problem at the end of the year as they were at the start of the year.
I am shocked. He's still with the team, to be honest with you. This was the week. These are the days that look across the league, guys are fired. They've had the worst special teams for 3 years. I don't know the inner workings of who's to blame or et cetera, but this is when you make a change. When you have such glaring problems consistently for 3 years, I mean, I've been on Tony Sprono fired a special team coach for 2 back-to-back bad games. I mean, so these are the moves that I mean, they're. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already.
I'm going to ask you guys something about quarterback. We get Richard Thompson. Can you win with a quarterback who can't run and doesn't have the arm strength to deliver balls to the perimeter of the field? Let's see. And what was the other one? Just for common sense from Charles. Just for common sense, we don't need the quarterback to be a running back because Buffalo quarterback plays like a running back. Our quarterback is a better passer and defense is faster. Let me ask you guys this. Chris Grier said Tua's got to stay healthy. He's got to play smarter. What's the penalty for that? Like, how do you force Tua to do that, David Furones? Like, what? I mean, we saw him diving at the knees of a guy who made an interception. We saw him diving against Houston to get a first down. How do you pound this into Tua's head? Keep yourself safe. We need you.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. How do you get him to finally see the light and decide to keep himself safe in these moments where I think he understands them when he's just got a clear mind, is at a podium expressing it, or probably when he's in the quarterback's room and they're talking about it. And Darrell Bevell is telling us, I mean, like he told us, the media, how he's working with Tua when I asked him about taking fewer risks. And, when he's in the pocket, there's not much he can do when he needs an extra second to make a throw. But it's when he's outside of the pocket where he has to either throw it away, live to see another down, not try to scramble. But then that competitor in him comes out in those moments. So he's got, I mean, it's got to get through to him somehow. And I think maybe exactly what he's experiencing this season could help is the shame and the remorse that he felt, where at one point, unprovoked, he sort of just started opening up that, boy, I feel like I really let the team down because I had myself unavailable because of the decision I made for 4 key games where the team went 1-3 against a soft part of the schedule. Really, the whole schedule was soft this year for the Dolphins. They didn't take it. But, I think hopefully it is that remorse that he feels over how he is truly the prime reason the season went awry. And that decision led to the season's downfall.
All right, let me ask you something. The point that Furones brings up that Tua brings this up unprovoked. Quite often we hear players say stuff that is just parroting what the coach told them or what the GM told them, like being late. That McDaniel says we talked about that in the team meeting and the players told you that in the exit meeting. Is there a chance that Tua was just parroting something that Mike McDaniel had recently told him? Or do you think Tua had that moment of realization where I've got to play smarter, I've got to keep myself healthy?
Well, I'm sure the team talked to him about it. So, whether he was parroting or he realizes it, to me, there's a larger issue here. The issue is how the franchise is in trouble because your biggest contract, and I've written this, your biggest contract is your biggest concern.
Yep.
You can't have that. You just can't have the word of this contract hadn't even kicked in yet, and there's your general manager who drafted an injury-prone quarterback, and now is saying, "Whoa, it's unacceptable that he gets hurt." I mean, are you kidding me? You're putting this on Tua? I mean, he takes some hits and he gets hurt. I get, he's got to be more careful because he has to be more careful. But this is who you drafted. This is why when you drafted him, people were saying, whoa, he's small, he's slow, he's got a lot of injuries. Is this going to get better in the NFL? And then, so the past 4 years, he's missed 4 games, 0 games, and 6 games. What do you prepare for? The Dolphins prepared for him missing 0 games because he went one season without missing a game, and they're like, "Oh my God! If he hadn't missed a game, we would have made the playoffs." I mean, you got to prepare for him missing 4 games every year. I mean, so I'm mystified a little. I get everybody's putting this on Tua because he's got to take better care. I agree with that, but there's a larger issue here of the franchise invested in this guy. And now the general manager who took him is blaming him for getting hurt.
Yeah, and invested in him off of one season where he remained fully healthy. So you didn't really have a sample size that proved that he would stay healthy. He did go right back to it first year when he was 20. So when he's up for the extension, he kept himself healthy. So he's got it in him. He could do it when on the line. But then now he's going to have to reach back into how he stayed healthy. But I get your larger point is, yes, this franchise trusted an injury-prone quarterback and then didn't have a good backup plan. Yeah.
Let me ask you guys 2 things here, or 2 texts here. Fitzgerald Grass says it's almost time to give up hope on this team. 25 years of garbage. Stephen Ross needs fresh eyes with this operation. And then we have this. Where did it go? This team messed up by putting Tua on IR when everyone knew it was unnecessary, and then they have the audacity to place blame on him. So let me ask you this, Dave Hyde, the one about you need new eyes. Should they have brought somebody in over Chris Grier like they did with Mike Tannenbaum, like a director of football operations? And when did they mess up by putting Tua on IR? I know Furones is kind of a proponent of that, but do you need a new overseer, and should they have put Tua on IR?
Look, if you're going to need a new overseer, you just get rid of Grier. I mean, you don't need an overseer; you need a new GM. Okay, and as far as IR, everybody's a concussion expert now. Oh, well, he looked okay after a week. They're relying on the doctors who study concussions, whose lives is concussions, saying he needs to stay out of money. Okay, why? We play doctor in this job way too much, and so I get it. It wasn't good for the season. Maybe in retrospect, he could have come back after 3.5 weeks. But if the doctors who deal with concussions say he needs to sit down, he's had a lot of concussions, they're starting to build, you got to really look out for his health now. Why wouldn't you listen to them? I have no problem with them sitting whatever they were told to do by the doctors.
Yeah.
Dr. Furones, the floor is yours.
Yeah, right. Well, so here's my issue with it is the doctors, I want to know what exactly the doctors told the organization, because if it's just, all right, he needs time to heal, he has to sit out certain time. Did they give them the arbitrary number that it has to be that he does not see a game action again until 45 days later, which is what the Arizona Cardinals game history for that one is from the Thursday night week 2 game against Buffalo? Because you could, with the bye week during the stretch of 4 games that he missed, you could have had him sit out more than a month. It was 38 days, the Colts game, that followed the bye week from the concussion. So that was still time. And then why on day 39, the Monday after the Colts game, when Tua is first eligible to come back from IR, 4 games, is it the big rollout? How he is coming back. And I feel like you could have given him the time necessary. We understand time, but without tying yourself to what is a football roster decision, which is placement on IR. I don't think doctors say you need to put him on IR to free up a roster spot and tie him to 4 games missed. You had the bye week there. You could have said, hey, Tua, we're not going to place you on IR just in case if everything's great for you to come back when we come back from the bye, but you're not coming back before the bye. It's 3 games you're going to miss, and I think they did that part of it because they counted on things being a little bit better for those 3 games that Tua missed. I think they thought they could get by against that part of the schedule and said, well, the difference between 3 games and 4 games with the bye in the middle is not that big. We'll get by okay. They quickly found out it wasn't going to be the case. They already put Tua on IR, so then it was 4 games missed minimum. And I think Tua would have won that Colts game, a 16-10 final. If Tua was the quarterback instead of Tyler Huntley and then Tim Boyle up by the end of it, I think Tua wins that game. And then probably second game back Tua, which we saw he had a fine performance at Buffalo in his second game back. Even though that Arizona Cardinals game got away a little bit as far as the shootout, high scoring, 28-27. I think he's probably a little sharper in that game too. As I almost nearly sent my phone away. I think he's a little bit sharper in that game where he probably wins that one too.
Here's a few more things on Tua. Richard Thompson says everybody focuses on Tua's health, but the larger problem is that he is physically limited, and that limits what the offense can do. Slick Video says if you paid a quarterback and now your biggest issue is the backup, it is safe to say you did not draft the right guy. Adam the Who says, was the hip injury a good reason why Tua never hit a deep ball this season? Brandon says sunglasses. That's my favorite text of the whole day. Sunglasses. What the hell was he doing wearing those sunglasses, David Furones?
What do I know? I don't, we haven't been able to ask him about it since that happened. His last media availability was before that game, but it was truly bizarre. And I know I was sitting next to you at MetLife Stadium press box, and
for a guy in the spotlight, he really makes some, strange things like the "show me the money" quote. That's like that's the first thing you want to say after signing the contract. Taking on fans, sitting on the couch with potato chips, unnecessary, and the sunglasses. Wasn't a good look, was it? I mean,
it was not that.
Maybe he didn't realize that the sun sets earlier in Northeast in New York, New Jersey.
Just wasn't a good look. But to the larger point there, I agree. Look, there's the health concerns, and the question is the ceiling of his game. Where's that go? And the two make him the biggest issue on the team, and his backup, because of him, is the second biggest issue. And that's not a situation you want to be months after you gave him the biggest contract in franchise history.
Yeah. And I know, Brandon, I know that's, but he got concussed in Houston, you're saying, but the sunglasses just not a bad look. Deheshe says his pullover choice was questionable too. Wow. I got game New Jersey, AJ New Jersey. He thinks he's Jim McMahon. Yeah, McMahon did used to do that. The old Bears quarterback. All right, gentlemen, let's migrate on to our third segment here. What constitutes a successful season in 2025? And we kind of touched on this before, but let me ask it to you from this standpoint, Dave Hyde. I think that the Dolphins take too much of a moral victory, which my argument is it should be morale victory because it helps your morale, not your morals. But anyway,
That's good, Perk.
I
That's
know.
good.
Yes. Yeah, well, you know what? The exercise, the stationary bicycle should be a stationary unicycle because there's only one wheel. But we digress. So, anyways, listen. So
You can write out Seinfeld too. You're ready. You're ready.
Although I think some of them do have two wheels, and in fact, I believe there are other models that they have the one wheel in the front, but the stand on the back, they have two little wheels so that you can move it around whenever you want to position it. So that might be a stationary tricycle.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. There you go. See the stationary bike. Anyway. I know it. Here's what I'm getting to, though. For the Dolphins, they take so much pride in saying that we only lost to Buffalo by a 61-yard field goal. Yes, and I'm troubled by this because they take so much pride in that. And if they think that they're only a 61-yard field goal away from Buffalo, the team that has beaten them 6 of 7 times in the McDaniel era, they're delusional. Do you think that they really think that they are kind of that close to Buffalo and Green Bay and Baltimore? And do you think that they think that? Hyde?
This is sort of like Dolphin fans saying, because the Dolphins did play New England tough back during that 17 stretch when New England went to 9 Super Bowls and Dolphins didn't even get close to one. And yet you had fans, hey, we're right there with New England because we play them. No, you're not. You're not. I mean, seriously. So, but as far as what makes a successful year, let's can we narrow it? What makes a successful offseason? I mean, let's start to. I mean, the year's going to play out. It's too far away for me to see, but successful offseason, they got a lot of holes. I mean, we talked to 2 guards. You got 2 safeties, assuming Javon Holland isn't back, and that's a pretty safe assumption. The cornerback situation's a mess. I mean, assuming your best player on defense, Jalen Ramsey, he's going to be 31 next year.
Yeah.
And the young guys you drafted, Noah Benogany, he's long gone. But Cam Smith, there's nothing there. Nothing that we've seen anyway. So, the defensive line. Now that's where you're going to get some guys back, and that can really transform the defense. But there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of holes there.
Furones Hyde hits on a good topic. What makes a successful offseason in 2025 for the Dolphins?
Yeah, well, you have to prioritize backup quarterback. You're going to have to operate, obviously, a little bit tied, strapped for cash. Already $2.6 million over the salary cap with the salaries you're committed to, and that's with a lot of holes that you have to fill. So a couple of guards, a couple of safeties most likely, because I think you're bringing Javon Holland back, or Jordan Poyer if he might even decide to retire as well. If Twan Armstead retires, left tackle and waiting. Also, there's that. You're going to build draft, 10 draft picks. I think that's part of the reason why they saw that the 3rd round story pick so valuable and go big for quarterback and hope that they can get by to a stay healthy for a consecutive season. That didn't go well, and then Scout and Mike White produced the backup that you need for Tua's inevitable. He may ended up missing 6, but you knew he was eventually going to miss time. Backup quarterback, guards on the offensive line, the 2 safeties, and then there's also some spots like that wide receiver, Malik Watson, could be develops into a 3rd wide receiver next to Tyreek Hill and Dylan Waddle. But all guys, you need a bigger pass catching target too. Physicality in the run game could be power running back to complement the Jalen Wright can build himself up into something that can produce in that regard. But a lot of holes, and you need a lot of economical fill-ins for these spots because you're pretty strapped salary cap.
Eric Bedenbaugh says guards, safety, QB. Brandon says prioritize QB1. H says guards and a taller receiver. Let's see here. Zo Vegas 75 says McDaniel is an offensive coordinator, not a head coach. Let me ask you guys this. If if Anthony Weaver decides to go become a head coach, does defensive coordinator become the number one priority in the offseason over backup quarterback?
I mean, I don't. They're 1 and 1A. I mean, because basically the defensive coordinators, as Micah said, is the head coach of the defense. I mean, he owns half the team, and it'll be their fourth defensive coordinator in 4 years,
Yes.
meaning a whole new scheme in 4 years, meaning will all these guys fit into the new scheme, you know, and you know, we've talked about guards and safeties. Those are, you know, if you were ranking position importance, those aren't high
Correct.
investment positions. And I'm not saying if there wasn't a great safety out there, they wouldn't take them in the first round. But you can get by with doing less there. Some of the other positions you can't. But yeah, look, I don't know how. You need a top end defensive coordinator, and Robert Sala's there. Mike McDaniel has a history with him. That'd be obviously the first name people point to. There's other names out there too, but Weaver did such a great job. I thought. I thought going into the season, the defense was the question because of you're starting a 33-year-old safety that Buffalo didn't want anymore on a very minimum contract. You got a 38-year-old defensive tackle nobody knew. You're missing some of your guys because of injury, and yet the defense held up its end very well. So Weaver would be a loss, but we'll see what happens with him as a head coach.
Furones, can this game, staying with defense, if Weaver leaves, can this team control games with its defensive front seven? You are going to have, obviously, Zach Sealer, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Chop Robinson, Jordan Brooks. Can they control games defensively with that front seven, do you think?
Yeah, if you have, especially if Calais Campbell decides to come back now,
Yeah.
I think it might be pretty contingent on Anthony Weaver. I think Weaver played a big part in getting Calais Campbell to come to the Dolphins, the history that they have in Baltimore. But maybe if Weaver lands a job, maybe Calais wants to go there. Maybe Calais would end up going to Baltimore. This is all if he decides to play another season. He could easily retire. But Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell were a tremendous defensive tackle. I think you developed on him a little bit too, so he's a nice piece of the rotational tackle. But without Calais, you would need to bring someone else in on a cheap contract. But you have Sealer there. I would be excited to see the edge rushing combination or now trio would be maybe even a foursome if Emmanuel Ogbah, who was a starter this year and was decent, could then be like a fourth rotational piece with Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb healthy and Chop Robinson going into year two. That would be a very nice edge rushing tandem with Jordan Brooks at inside linebacker, and then who's going to be the other guy next to him? Maybe they feel like they found something in Tyrell Dodson, signing him off waivers midseason, and then him filling in for Anthony Walker a couple games. Got AFC Defensive Player of the Week 1 week. He seems to be a ball hawk in the middle of the defense, back-to-back week interception. So, you might have a solid front seven that you can build on. That hopefully it's Anthony Weaver leading them again, but it would be better for him, of course, if he lands a head coaching job. And I bet if Weaver does take a job, then probably Robert Saleh would be top of the list. If we're already thinking forward, Mike Tang has a relationship with him. Saleh, of course, was with him in San Francisco, got fired from the New York Jets this past season. He might be the top candidate if that scenario played out where Weaver got coaching elsewhere.
All right, so as we close this out, sticking with Dave Hyde's suggestion of they need to have a successful offseason here, Slick Video says defense not the issue. It's always the offense. Mr. Tua cannot get it done. Let's see. H says still sucks that we let go AVG, Andrew Van Ginkel. Let's see. I got game. AJ New Jersey says Weaver should be the Miami head coach. Let me ask you guys this. Did Chris Grier have a decent offseason last year, save for backup quarterback? Does that statement even make sense? Because listen, you did get Aaron Brewer, you did get Jonnu Smith, you did draft Patrick Paul and Chop Robinson. You found Anthony Weaver. He did some good things, right? But the backup quarterback thing. So, Hyde, is it possible that Grier did have a decent offseason last year?
Well, you can look at he has had some good drafts. He has had some good personnel decisions. It's the architecture of the team, though. It's using the salary cap. How are you going to use your assets? And so they build an offense. They have spent tons of money on two receivers. They traded draft picks for the defense. Bradley Chubb, Jalen Ramsey. So those are anybody can make those moves. Like you look at Jalen Ramsey, great player. You want for a third round pick, he will give you money. Okay, so you get that helps the defense. Does it help the future of the team when you say we're going to spend the money here? So to me, it isn't his individual decisions that are always the case. It's more where are we putting our assets? And how are we spending the money? They unnecessarily spend a lot of money on guys. Why did you extend Jalen Ramsey at 30 when he already had 2 more years left on his contract? Why did you have to give 2 of that contract? They were just betting against themselves, $50 million. Would he get $50 million in the offseason this year? And I get you wanted a culture of comfort, everybody being happy, and that's the way you want your team to be constructed. But that isn't always for good business. So, he's got 10 draft picks, and that's a lot this year.
Furones, Chris Grier, look, if maybe you could make the argument if it wasn't for that Tua injury, they would have made the playoffs, but you can also make the argument he should have found a backup quarterback. He shouldn't have given out those contracts. Getting Brewer and Jonnu and some of those guys was good. Can both things be true? Grier had a good offseason. Grier had a bad offseason. Can both things be true, Furones?
Both things can be true. A lot of those moves is probably what saved this from being the complete disaster of going like 4-13. Look at having a season like the Jaguars or someone from that start just going completely awry. I mean, they were sitting at 2-6. Then it could have easily gone. I mean, basically halfway point, you double that, then you're looking at exactly what the Jaguars had at 4-13. If the second half goes the same way, so Jordan Brooks was a great move. Calais was a fantastic.
Yes.
Obviously for 1 year, and you take it to the next offseason, see if you can. He's back, bring him back. Obviously, that was a great find to be able to get Calais Campbell, Aaron Brewer, Jonnu Smith, of course. So, I mean, a lot of the new additions were the highlight of this season, which is interesting. But it goes back to Hyde's point, though. A lot of overspending to make everyone happy. And it was because, all right, you paid Jalen Waddle early in the offseason, gave him a big contract extension.
And let's remember the blueprint. Initially, they were collecting draft picks in 2019, trading players, collecting draft picks. They had a ton of draft picks. Then they did a 180, and all of a sudden they decided we're going to win right now and trade draft picks. So for the previous 2 drafts, meaning 22 and 23, they got nothing out of those draft picks, besides HN, I think. I mean, that's it. And you can't. That gets into roster management and architecture as GM that are really problems for this team.
Yeah, I think they fast forwarded because it's a natural progression is that you rebuild, so you stock up on draft picks, but then they sort of fast forwarded the process a year or 2 too quick because maybe that 10-6 2020 record, that 9-8 2021, feeling like you're closer to the war, then leading the organization to say, no, let's flip the switch. Now we're going away from the building war through the draft. Now we've got a roster that we can pay for, and then it has proven to turn out.
We'll end with this one from Roberto Roque. Players do not respect the coach or the organization itself, just collecting an easy paycheck, no pride in what they do.
Yeah, I think that's too harsh. I think they do respect Mike. They like Mike. Now, do they fear him? Do they, again, there's got to be. I was always told when you're going to hire a coach or a general manager, mainly a coach, is the first question to ask is, can he command a room? And Mike can address a room fine. Can he command it? Can he instill that line between liking the coach, respecting him, and fearing him somewhere in there that you're gonna. So a Tyreek Hill is going to be on time because Tyreek Hill, you fine him $5,000. I'm not sure he cares. And there's a lot of players like that for whatever reason, Mike said he learned the Adam Gase thing, which was finding players aren't going to respond to fines in today's world. And now why Chris Grier was here for Adam Gase, why he kind of told him that and tried to expedite the process a little, I don't know. But I think that's harsh to say they don't respect Mike.
Furones, what do you think is Mike McDaniel's role in kind of the mess of the players showing up late and all that? Can he get that ironed out this offseason?
Yeah, that'll be the big thing for him. It seems like that is the first focal point, considering that was the big message sent in the exit meeting that the team had. So, yeah, he's going to have to prove that he can command the room and command that respect to follow his rules. And it's not just his rules, if you're trying to win a football game. So, I'm not like Eric Spoelstra leading the big three, LeBron James bumping him when things were going bad early on. And at that time, Eric Spoelstra hadn't proven anything. He was the guy that Pat Riley trusted after Pat Riley stepped down coaching the team. But it's not like he had won anything yet. And now he's given these huge personalities, the big three, to lead. And now it's Mike McDaniel's turn here to prove that big personalities like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, big egos. Can you control that locker room, get them to be on time, follow the rules that you have established? That'll be his big assignment for 2025.
Papa Hog, what's up? EJ Barrow, what's up? And we will end on this one. Karen S. I don't want to say the fans are bad, but when I told ChatGPT they were still my favorite team, it gave me a referral to see Tua's concussion doctor. There we go, baby. There we go. That's what we will end it on for this season. I kind of like that, actually. All right. Thank you for everybody for watching. Thanks to Dave Hyde. Thanks to David Furones. We will let you guys know when we will be back with our next show. It might be sometime right before or right after the Super Bowl. There we go, baby. It's
unlit, an unlit cigar this year. Very unsatisfying.
Yeah. Was that an allusion to Tyreek Hill? One of his incidents? There was something.
All right, fellas, we're out of here. Thanks to everybody for watching. We will see you next edition, whenever that is, Dolphins Deep Dive with Perkins.